Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Creative Contact. I'm your host, Orion. Thank you so much for tuning in. You could be anywhere, but you're here with me on my 35th motherfucking birthday. Pretty crazy, if I do say so myself. Welcome to my parents' place. You know it's real, and you know it's a Kia pod when I'm wearing something other than just a black tank top. Got the blue beanie on, got the red on. You know, I'm feeling dressed up. My bro's coming up a little bit later. I'm trying to be a good little brother and shit. So that's the way it goes. Listen, this is not going to be an episode that has like a ton of gems. It's kind of crazy how fast time goes. And so I didn't have a ton of time to prepare for this episode. It was a little bit more impromptu because my mom and my girlfriend are in town. And so I feel, to be totally honest, I like these pods, if you all have rocked with me before, you know they're personal. And so I personally, I like to record when people aren't around, and so it's hard when like the people are like hustling and bustling around because I don't know. I don't feel like I can just like totally let loose or dig into that deep part of my heart that I feel like is where I sometimes get the best juice for these episodes. So I thought I'd do something a little bit different this time. And what I thought I would do is I found in my journal today my answers to some questions that I like to ask myself every year. But this was from years ago. So this was from 3 years ago. So I was 33. I guess I just turned 33, or I guess I'm 35 now. So maybe it's 2 years ago. Listen, math isn't my strong suit, okay? It was 2 or 3 years ago. I don't have the exact date here because I opened the notes app and now it just says today, but I think it was. So this is my 32nd or my 33rd birthday. And I had these questions that I was like at a point in Medellin in my life that I remember where I was when I wrote these, and I was in Parque del Rio, Medellin, and I was listening to a Cal Newport podcast. And it was right when I think it was probably 3 years ago. It was right when I was getting into filmmaking. And I had that video on restarting and kind of like restarting your life, something along those lines. And so I decided, I was like, you know what, there's all these questions that I hadn't put the thought into that I realized I need to just like sit down and think about. I'd done it years before when I hired a business coach, and he gave me this exercise of like where I wanted to kind of see things in 5 years. And I thought that was really powerful. Or maybe it was 3 years or something like that. I can't remember, but I got my years mixed up, obviously. But it was always interesting kind of looking back on those and sometimes seeing how far or how close you are to certain, I don't want to say goals, but let's say goals for certain things, and how I'd realized that at that time that I'd set way too ambitious goals. Part of them, I think, were, you know, from a good place, but I think I talk about this a lot. If you listen to other pods, this kind of aspect of needing to be a little bit delusional if you have a big dream. And it was interesting reflecting on like how I didn't even come close. And so, but at the time it felt, you know, I was like, you know, I want to set ambitious goals. But what I did was then I kind of stripped it away. And I was like, what are the actually important, like component parts of these goals? And a big part of them was feeling seen. I think a lot of the ambitious pieces of like achievement come from feeling seen. And another big part was love. And another part was freedom. And I think those are like the three big levers that still resonate with me today. Is it really comes down to like, this is what I was thinking about this morning, kind of. I've been thinking about it a lot going on long walks here. I'm up at my parents' place. And it's like wanting to make really good art. And I think before I was just trying to be like, I was like, I'm going to headline my work, but like that wasn't actually real insofar as like that's not truly what Kia wants. Like Kia goes to bed at 9, like, you know, Pod, you know this about me. So it's not like I really want to be on the road. Like tour as a musician sounds exhausting, but I really want to. My girlfriend Lena asked me a little bit ago, she's like, are you trying to be famous with this writing shit? And I was like, nah, not, but I would love to be, I guess, known in my niche. And I guess that is a part, is like still feeling seen or recognized for good, making good art. It's still something that I think I crave. And I don't want to like, again, go on these like huge speaking tours, but I would love to like go on podcasts. You know, this is something I wrote in the journal of a couple of years ago of like my main goal. What do I want this to look like? Write, speak, and teach. And I still stand by that. Like that is still my dream. I'm doing a lot of writing, not like some speaking here, not really, and like not really the teaching part yet, but like I'd love to get to the point where the writing, I'm like known. I'm making my living doing it, and two, I'm like invited on podcasts, or like to go speak at conferences and these sorts of things about writing or storytelling and you know, crime thrillers, and just like I would love to get to that point where like I'm not like bothered if I go to the airport, like people are like like that, you know, I want to be able to live my life and dress in my sport, you know, attire and not have people come up to me when I'm just feeling like not talking. But I would still love to have opportunities. I guess I would love to have opportunities to I think part of it is just having people interested, you know, to move. There becomes this kind of like interesting, like fulcrum. Maybe that word is like, it's a, you know, a bigger word that I should be using at this point, but like where it's like you pay people to like read your art and stuff, where it's like I'm at that point where like I'm paying people. I feels like there's maybe a flywheel is better, and we're gonna swap this metaphor, mid thought, but like I'm having to do a lot of work to try to I have to pay people basically to like read my art, and I would love to get to the point where people aren't just like actually paying me for it, but also like interested in reading, like asking me about reading it, or asking me about seeing it, whatever that, right now it's writing, who knows what it's going to morph into, but that is like the dream, is actually have some to be seen, for lack of a better word, for for the work. That's a big one, and that one is still resonates and is still in this these reflections of like the first question is, what do I want my life to look like? I've got the bokeh up crazy on this, so you probably can't read it, but what I want my life to look like is like almost identical to what it is right now. I think that is probably the biggest piece that I've been chasing for so long, that I still is like, I'm making progress on it, but it's still the farthest away. But reading through this, it's been interesting to see how I've made huge progress in other parts of my life. And I think this like around stability and love and things of that nature. And that was really, really, that made me feel really good about this. And so far as like still frustrated in some of like, I got the day job and I'm still like chipping away at this fiction empire, whatever. But that I've got the love piece so much more dialed in, that I have a relationship. I know what that feels like. We're going to get a dog soon. We were dog sitting, and like just this sense of like having, like building that part that is still incredibly important to life. Arguably the most important part is like the family bit. And that's the part that I do see kind of coming to fruition with my girlfriend and even being here with my family and just feeling so lucky and so blessed in so many ways with like the relational part. It's not like I have like a bunch of friends in Medellin, but I have some. And I have a bunch of obviously a bunch of friends, just like, nomad homies, which is awesome. But I'm starting to kind of build the friendship a little bit more in person, especially around like UFC. That was one of the things that was on when I was like 29 or 30. That was my dream, to go to a UFC fight with some friends. And I'm getting close to executing on that, but there are still awesome homies that like I'll go watch UFC cards with on Saturdays. And that's nice that like I feel like I'm starting to kind of like get that part dialed in more, which is like the social piece, the family piece, the love piece, which is like such a foundational bedrock of this. And there was a part maybe a couple months ago where me and my girl were kind of at like this crossroads of sorts. And that was when we started going to therapy and working through our shit, and we'd come pretty close to kind of separating. And I'd had these visions about it. And to be honest, they were almost like fantasies of like being single again, and just I was having fantasies of like moving back into my parents' house, like having my day job, like just stacking a bunch of bread, and then just like going back to Asia or something like that, and just like living off that for years and writing again. And there is still a part of me like, of course, misses that part of my life, but realizing that the grind, the solo grind of just grinding now these days is not as fulfilling as it used to be, 10 years ago. I've been nomading officially 8 years last month, which is insane. May 8th, I found the day this morning. I was like, I think I've been like almost a decade. So you've always been at 8 years. And that, I think for a long time, I was like, I could just do my art shit forever and I'll be fine. Hence why I got the vasectomy and stuff like that. And now I'm thinking like, it just doesn't feel like enough, because my day to day, yes, it's the same, but I have when I'm just Kia, like my life is like this. It's like a day to day. I never dip super duper low. Like I just feel like I got the tools, like I can dig Kia out of these little dips and stuff. But that life is supposed to be lived, with others, unless you're like a monk on a hilltop or something. Like it's a relational community oriented being. And I'm not saying I'm the most social guy. I'm far from that. But to have a partner, have a dog, maybe, have a family, these sorts of things that I think can be just really powerful. And again, not for everybody, but for myself, I think it's the hardest part of life for me, and that's why I think that was my biggest takeaway, was my stuff with Lena was almost completely irrelevant to like my Lena problems were almost more like Kia problems. It was more like I just didn't have, it was almost like I would have these same problems with anybody. And these were things that I just needed to work out with myself in living in partnership, and what that means, compromising, sacrifice, these things that are still very difficult for me after living by myself for damn near, 34 years. I'm set. There's a lot of ways that I'm set in my ways. I'm rigid. I'm really dialed in. I've been learning a lot about Elon Musk recently, because there's the book dropped by the same guy who did the Almanac of Naval Ravikant. He just dropped one on Elon, and it's fascinating. And so it's not like I'm trying to be Elon, but like there are points of like his success that I do try to think about and implement in my life. And one is urgency, that like I think is this balance between like a Cal Newport slow productivity and a Elon Musk like urgency, where it's just they're very different, approaches. But I do think that's really important of like, how do I still stay, keep like my feet to the fire? And it's not like I have any problem with that, but it's almost that I have too much of a problem with that, because then kind of I have tension with people, whether it's friends or with my partner, because I'm like so dialed in. And so it's like learning to let go of the reins a little bit, I think, is kind of like one of Kia's big life lessons that I think I'm getting better at. And the whole, just to round this thing out, when I was thinking about living life alone again and like just like doing my thing and grinding, whatever, there was a piece of it that felt like a little bit less. Like I love movie nights with Lena, or like just like Saturdays where we'll go do stuff. Like there kind of becomes like a beauty to the mundane of day-to-day life that I really like. Any day, if we like watch a movie or something, it can feel so much more exciting to me than just like when I watch them alone. I still love going to movies alone, don't get it twisted. But like a Saturday movie night, when I think about it with Lena, I'm just like eating ice cream and like hanging out in the afternoon, and like we make these homemade ice creams, like making ice cream together and watching movies and shit. Like there's something about that just kind of feels the cup in a different way. And so, that's a big one. Has been, I think, a lot of my learning over the last year and a half has been in this like relational piece of like understanding so much of my issues with the relationship are actually Kia issues. As my sister-in-law says, if you spot it, you got it. That's been really powerful and a big takeaway. And I feel like for me, the best way for me to work through that is in partnership. And I just learned so much about myself being a partnership, the things that like really irk me, and where I'm coming up short sometimes compared to where I think I am, but also this feeling of enoughness that I think, the older I get, the more I dig into it, I can kind of sort of peel that back a little bit and understand where that comes from. But also, letting myself be loved, has been really interesting. And Lena, shout out to Lena, she made me this super sweet little like canvas slide every day. It was called like All the Things I Love About You. And it was just so sweet, and just like that type of thing that I feel really good by myself. But when I'm with Lena, like my highs are super high, at the same time, the lows are like when I'm with Lena too, like when it's rough, when she's mad or whatever, like my lows are way lower than I am when it's just Kilo, like rocking solo. Like those dips are really hard. And like that, those are a couple episodes ago when I was talking about crying. It's the hardest I think I've cried in as long as I can remember. It's like the most pain I felt as long as I can remember. And so I think there's something to be said about that. If it's like she's just kind of like a battery that like charges my life in like both directions. It's I feel like even like the Energizer Bunny doing that. But there's something about it that it's just like she puts the jetpack in my life, and we're like going up, and it's like we go super high, but also like we crash really hard too. And I think that's just life in relationships. And I think a big piece of that, I'm really grateful for a lot of successful podcasters and YouTubers and those people that are in relationships too that share about them, because it helped me realize that like we say this all the time, I say this all the time, but like it's a different thing to like know it and like really feel it. It's like that no relationship's perfect. When I hear like Stephen Bartlett from Diary of the CEO talking about like why he's scared of marriage and why he ended up proposing, but it's the scariest thing he ever done, and the problems he has in his relationship and looking at his wife, and like it's just, you realize that that's a piece that's like ever changing and evolving. There's this other thinker, writer, professor I don't know, but that I love, called Arthur Brooks. And he talks about, on a podcast the other day, I heard him, he was like, my wife's probably mad at me right now because I wasn't able to text her before I came into this show. And I was like, okay, so it's like you are forever in trouble as a spouse. I'm like, okay, got it. I thought that was just me. But joking but not joking, I think there's something about that of I don't know about you, but I'm meaning me, like put these people up on pedestals and feel like they've got everything figured out. And you realize that a lot of people are just kind of winging it, and that they're going through their own shit. Everybody's dealing with their own shit. And I think about this a lot when it comes to these like weird bodily injuries. My back's giving me a hard time. Like I'm just getting old, people. Don't get old. But the fact that like everybody's playing with a handicap. Alex Hormozy talks about he tore his ACL or his quad or something this last year. Like other people like going through miscarriage. Like everybody's playing with a handicap. So the whole point is that like, this is just the analogy that I make because I'm a MMA fan, but like no fighter gets into that cage 100%. Like they're always injured. And Sean Strickland a couple weeks ago beat possibly one of the most dangerous guys. And he couldn't use one arm. He basically had like messed up his shoulder like 2 weeks before. And so he had one arm and he beat this guy that was like a crazy grappler. And so it's like, that's just been really resonating for me, is like to kind of kill your excuses, to be like, dude, like everybody's playing with a handicap. We don't know what people's are because we kind of play them close to the chest sometimes, but like that doesn't mean that, that's not a good excuse for not to, achieve what you want to. So there's some big ones. And then I've got this list here. And so a couple of these are just thoughts. They're like, I said, what do you believe right now? And it's a long list. And these are some things that there's a bunch here, so I'm not going to go into all of them, but there were a couple that I just thought were interesting. And one of them that resonated with me is, there's a couple here that I liked, but when it came to especially this relationship, is I feel like there's one I hear that says be the best part of someone's day. And I really like that. And I think about that with Lena, where I can intentionally choose sometimes to like feel like it doesn't take much time or effort, but just like feel like love in my heart, and then like intentionally be like, let me be super nice to her today, or like, because there's certain times that she drives me fucking crazy, and it's vice versa. There's all these little things, blah blah blah, but a lot of it comes down to like just like living together with somebody that drives you crazy, not necessarily like her, although sometimes it is too. We're totally different cultures, very different on that masculine feminine energy shit. And so, but there's a part of me that like, I can almost feel like I can almost choose to be like, let me choose love today. And that's been really big for me, because I know she's like Kirby. If you ever played Super Smash Bros. Or played like Mario, like she's just a big Kirby, where she's like sucking in the energy of like whatever I give her. And so it's like, if I like give her kind of like fucked up energy, like that's what she like sucks that up, and it's like I get that back. But I feel like if I really lead with love, a lot of times it's like a conscious thought too. I'll be like, I'll try to feel it, and I'll be like, man, I really love this woman. Let me act like I really love her, like as much as I feel right now, and I'll kind of conjure up some love in my heart, and then be especially loving, and I like get that, like she'll like give me like the Kirby rebound love back. And it's interesting how much of that is, if I'm on autopilot, or like sometimes like I'll be working and stuff and she'll come in and want to cuddle or want to sit, and I'm like, oh, I get grouchy. I'm like, oh, this is my optimization time and I'm supposed to be working right now, and it's only out, and it's like all this pressure of shit that like is ultimately irrelevant. Another thing I wrote on here that I really liked was, we're just floating on a big rock. And it's so true. Like right now I'm at my parents' house and I'm still trying to like optimize it. Like I extended my contract for 30 days. So my job ends at the end of this month if I don't perform. I'm working on like a book right now. I'm working on content. I'm trying to get my book marketing going. And there's just a lot about that it can feel like we have all this pressure to do stuff that like ultimately doesn't really matter. It's not like people, as much as I'd like to think so, but like it's not like people read my crime thrillers and they're like, it changed my life. It's like the whole point is it's entertainment. Maybe you escaped your own life for an hour, right? But it's not like, this is like some meditative spiritual practice. So ultimately, it's like, one of the big reframes that I liked a lot is, how much would I pay to get this time back after this person's gone? I thought about that last night. My dad, he'd finished cooking dinner, but my mom was still in the garden, and he was like, hey, I'm just going to sit on the deck for a little bit. And I was like, okay. I like had a bunch of voice notes I was going to try to respond to. I could get some other work in real quick. Some shit I wasn't able to get to during the day. And that question kind of snuck in on me, and it was like, Kia, like, how much would you give to sit with your dad again for 20 minutes when he's gone? I was like, a lot of money. And it was interesting that last night at dinner, my mom shared, I asked my dad and my mom, I was like, where were you when you were 35? because it's just interesting. I'm not trying to compare, but sometimes you got to compare. You know what I mean? To give yourself a heuristic. And if you have super successful parents, it's probably not great. My parents have done well in like family stuff and career wise, but it's not like they were ever like career was like their number one priority. So, I was curious like where they were at in their life, because they both had very kind of like atypical lives. And my dad was like living in like a shack that he built out the back of his van, in the Ozark Mountains. And my mom she actually reversed it. She's like, at 35, she just started working in Cornell. But she's like, I had your brother when I was 27. She's like, I just finished at this bookstore. She'd been working at a bookstore. And she's like, I worked at this bookstore for 7 years. And I was like, I don't know anything about that. I was like, I knew she'd done it. But I was like, here's a woman I've spent, 18 years of my life with. I go on and I travel with my mom, once a year for 2 weeks. Every year for 2 weeks. Once a year, every year. And I'm like, I don't know hardly anything about that 7 years at the library. And I was like, damn, Ma. I was like, there's shit I still don't know about you. She's like, yes, there is. She's like, and let's keep it that way, But it's just so interesting too. I think about that too with Lena even. So we know each other a year and a half. And sometimes we sit down for dinner. We go out to dinner and it's like, so what do you want to talk about? You know what I mean? And it's like we sit down and we're both kind of tired. It's been a long week. And it's like, you just feel like someone that like, how well do you, like, I realize there's a ton of stories that she doesn't know about me. And there aren't ones that I necessarily just like want to volunteer out the blue. You know what I mean? Like I got my home runs, I got my heavy hitters, I got my go-tos, but there's joints that like, she probably won't ever know about me unless she asks. And I realize that that's the same for her. And like, we're all this sort of like, not infinite because, we don't have limited experience, but like we are a much deeper well of like nuance and stories, especially after 35 years, than I think we often realize. And so that was a big one too, of being like, you only get these people for a small amount of time. So like really appreciate it. Okay, moving right along. Some of these are, I really like this one, feel your feelings, all of them. That doesn't make them true. That's been a big one. Meditation, that's been helping me a lot. Thinking about, I think I've done a lot better at like, of having a vision for something, even like this crime, thriller, fiction empire thing I'm working on. If like people don't get the vision, I'm like, it's fine. Before with the music, it was like, if you didn't get it, it was like, fuck you, like wait until I show you some shit. What's Drake say? He's like, she never thought I'd be as big as Trey Songz. Boy, was she wrong. That was just negative energy for me to feed off. Now it's therapeutic, blowing money at the Galleria, Macy's Center, something where I discovered Bria. Landmarks the muses that inspired the music. When I learned it was sincere without trying to prove it. Like, just, there's something, sometimes you got to put Drake bars in your podcast, you know what I mean? And I feel the same way, like, that it's, before it was like, that it was like negative energy for me to feed off, and now, even though I'm not, like, Drake is cool, he's like, I'm Drake, so he's like, yeah, I made it bigger than, like, Trey Songz, where she wrong. I've just had, like, I was talking, it was so funny, I feel like my life, in terms of, like, success, I was like, I hit it hot at the gate. Like, high school was like rocky, so it wasn't like I was like the super popular guy, but like I did some cool shit with like the Key Club stuff and made it like some cool heights there. And then Cornell, I was like boom, 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 and then I was like, and it was like, I felt like it was like I was on this rocket up, and I was doing the things right, and it was like the music shows coming. I got the thing at the music industry, and then I was like, I got this, and then it was like just took like this weird turn and just like crash landed, and it's been like these like slow like hiccups like a little bit, and I'm like it's just like ever since. And how some people like actually get the success shit though. But what Lena asked me a while ago that was powerful was like, could I still feel good about this whole thing if it never happens? And that's something that's like, I think worth wrestling with, and that I have been wrestling with, because I banked 10 years on like, I'll show you energy. And if it never comes, then it's like, you never get that. It's like a 10-year career blue balls. You know what I mean? I was like, that's not cool. It's like, how do I just make it worth it even if it fails? That's a Seth Godin joint. Like, what would I do? Like, people are like, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? And it's like, what would you do if you knew you would fail? And that, I think, is a more powerful question, and one that like I'm thinking with this writing thing, that like it's a cool experiment. Either way, if I come out this other end and no, I don't sell any books, whatever, I learn about social media content, marketing, social media. I've learned a ton about the publishing industry. I've learned about storytelling. I've learned how to use AI to like help in this process. So there's like all these kind of like residual effects that come from learning this thing, whether or not it pops off. And so I think it's helped me internally not feel like I need like this big nut for, just continue a terribly sexual reference, but like, it's not like I need like that big climax to be like, fuck you. It's like, and it's like, it just helps me kind of like roll with it. I'm on like Drake shit, I'm just like, like Floyd Mayweather with it. Just, I can tell sometimes that like my mom might not believe in it, which is fine. Or like even my girl, like nobody has to believe in it is I guess my point, that like I believe in it and that's enough. There's like that I believe in me with this shit, and that like whether or not it's this, that like that success is, if you just keep shooting shots and don't give up. I've seen it enough times that like it's gonna work. It's just everybody's got their own timeline of when it does, and more money, more problems. That like I've had friends that made it work, and then you just get it. It's just a separate set of problems. And so it's like just figuring out what type of shit you want to deal with. And as I think you level up as a person, I think the universe gives you more opportunities. It's interesting how back in the day, I never could have imagined making 6 figures at a day job. I was like, that's a lot. And now, I'm making 6 figures. I'm like, this really isn't that, I'm like, not that much. Or also, I feel like because I've leveled up so much, now I feel like I'm underpaid making 6 figures, which is really strange to say. But like, there's like a leveling up around skills and mindset and money mindset, and also like not a feeling of like you're owed it, but a feeling of like I can do it, and that like this is my perspective, like self-perception with money has changed a lot, to be like, like, no, like that's not, you see what people are making when they're making like multiples of that, and I'm like I could do that shit. You know what I mean? It's like a lot of this is like you learn on the job and figure it out. Like I've never come into any job being like, I'm totally prepared, I'm overqualified. I remember I got rejected to be a bag boy at Whole Foods, when I was 27. So every job I've come in, I've been like, I can do it. And then just figure it the fuck out. And that's how I feel even right now with like the book stuff and whatever. Is like, it's just the kind of like, I'll figure it the fuck out thing. And I've always been a late bloomer. So I think I'm trying to be, even though 35 feels fucking old, I'll be honest, like in terms of my body, it's like, I'm 5 years until 40. I'm like, that is insane, y'all. But just trying to be a little bit easier on myself, be like, yeah, like all in due time, dude. Like I'm getting these key pieces locked in. It just takes time. And I'm glad I waited. Same with the girl, like Lena, like I feel great about her. I think we've been doing great. And I'm glad I took time, didn't rush that. Same with the book stuff. It's like, I can just zoom, the more time you have too, I think like the less a year commitment feels, where it's like right now I'm like, cool, there's all this shit I want to do, but it's like, it'll happen. Like I can do it all, you just not right now. And that's how I feel about it. It's like, I want to do all this shit. And I'm like, cool, we'll table out for next year thing. We're like, this year I'm focused on my shit, making the books, getting better at marketing. And it's like, cool, next year I'm like really doubling down. And I think there's like this, I can just zoom out a little bit. And I don't feel that, that same sort of like, I'm still in a rush, micro, was Gary Vee say, macro patience, micro speed. And that's kind of how I feel. It's like, I want to make the most out of every day, but also like zooming out a little bit. I'm like, no, I think like, I got it. It's just like, just give me time. And that's where the vision comes from. It's like, being able to zoom out a little bit and see the pieces coming together later that doesn't always make sense right now. So I've been yapping at y'all for 30 minutes. Maybe I wrap it up there. Yeah, this is cool too. I like this one. There's some gems in here. Identity is what you do, not what you say. Philosophy doesn't work in a vacuum. I like that a lot too. Play your dreams close to your chest. Keep them for your eyes only. Tell the world your dreams. They'll hold you accountable for them. Life is full of oxymorons, y'all. That's it. 35 and so alive. Crazy we made it this far. Grateful that I'm here, that I got everybody here still alive who loves me. I realize these pods, and I'll be able to say that, are winding down. Still frustrated sometimes, I think, with where I'm at in the grand scheme of things, but it's all good. I think I have a feeling that everybody probably feels that way if you've got this drive and ambition in you. And it's my first year. Did a lot of things. First time traveling with my girl. First time in couples therapy. First time I'm coding shit. Just because like all the apps and stuff. Like it's cool. I feel like I've grown a lot. Also learned a lot, and also realizing how much I still have to learn. I think that's one of the gems of getting older too. Is you realize you almost become more naive, but the more you know. It's kind of another fun oxymoron of life. Thanks all. Let's make another great year. Here's to building the fiction empire and building our family and enjoying our time on this flying rock. Hasta luego. Peace.